This is Josh Jelinski, the financial quarterback. Don't touch that dial. Hi, everybody. This is Josh Jelinski, the financial quarterback, and we're with Bobbi Rebell, CFP, best-selling author, and now enjoying golf from sunny Florida. So tell us, this was not on my list of questions to ask you, but I know you're in Florida. Are you enjoying Florida over New York?
I am. I miss my friends in New York. I want to be very delicate with this answer because I do love New York City in many ways, but I really love being a Florida resident, and I do live on a golf course, and I did just sneak out in the middle of the workday to play 9 holes of golf. I played very well. I was very proud of myself. I even parred a hole, got a bunch of bogeys, which is good for me because I'm still learning. And I'm back here talking to you. I'm excited to talk to you about, I don't know, whatever we're going to talk about today.
The title of the show is Are Future Generations Locked Out of Wealth? So we'll talk about all those things and more, but I always like to talk to you just about other things too. So Bobbi is the founder of Financial Wellness Strategies and the author of Launching Financial Grownups. Live your richest life by helping your almost adult kids become everyday money smart. So how's Financial Wellness Strategies going? I know that was a big thing you launched a year or two ago.
Yeah, it's kind of goes fast. It's been 2 years. I started it sort of as an adjunct when I launched my book, Launching Financial Grownups. And it's been really good because it's a great platform for me to do these workshops, generally in corporations, generally for younger people, is what I get hired to do. And you're talking to them just basically about adulting as a financial grown-up. And I do a presentation called the Financial Wellness Checklist. And it's really effective and very well received because even if schools were doing a great job teaching kids about real life money stuff, at the end of the day, when you're actually working in your first or second job, that's when it becomes real. And in the moment, you may not remember that, well, yes, in middle school, I did learn about balancing a budget. It's very different when you're actually facing real life decisions like, wait, if I want to actually have an apartment, I have to pay more than this percentage and it's going to mess up my budget. What am I going to do? These actual real world conversations where a lot of young people, for example, they come to me, they say, I don't know if I can really contribute to the 401k because it's so much money and I'm so tight on my budget. And you can work through with them. Well, when you factor in taxes, maybe it's not so much. Maybe try it this way, maybe try it that way. And so the real world applications of financial lessons is very different from what they learn in school, even if they do learn in school. And let's be honest, Josh, they don't usually learn it in school.
You always hear this being talked about. Oh, I want our public schools or our schools to teach kids about money. And I always remember who's going to teach this money class? The gym teacher. It's not going to be a, Harvard economist, or it's not going to be somebody like you or me who really is in the trenches every day talking personal finance. It's going to be somebody who fancies themselves a financial guru, and they're really not.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of programs are really well-intentioned. There's a lot of nonprofits out there that are really trying to do good things in the space. So it's not really a question of one or the other. It's really a question of both are good. But ultimately, and this is why I wrote the book, Launching Financial Grownups, which is aimed at parents, ultimately, it's the parents. They have the high stakes. Because at the end of the day, if we don't help our kids become financial grownups, we're generally going to be the ones picking up the pieces and kind of supporting them through life and preventing them from being their best adult selves, right? Because they're going to be dependent on us. The schools are short term in the end. The number of years your kids are in school is actually very short. So, maybe they're in high school 4 years, college 4 years. Let's hope 4 years for college, not more. But those guys, they check out. A professor, even if they teach it for a semester, then they're checked out, right? The parents are the consistent influence in the kids' lives, and we're the ones that really share those values. And without that, our kids are going to be lost. So I really am a big advocate for parents being involved. Even if you think your child is getting that information in school, it's different coming from a parent.
So what is the checklist? And I have all these questions on generational perspective on investing, on helping me to be maybe a better parent. How do you get it where you and your spouse are aligned too in your different money personas? So first, let's go to the checklist. What do you cover in the checklist?
Well, the checklist has a lot of different topics. I don't want to get into all of them, but it has to do with understanding how to budget, understanding how insurance works, understanding how retirement savings works, and really helping the young people understand and be motivated to really focus on those things, even if they seem like things that they shouldn't do. And also, and this is really important, not to fall for people that are selling them things that they don't need at that time in life, right? But they might need certain things. So they might not think that they need renter's insurance, but they do, right? They might not think that they need life insurance, and they might not, but I would walk them through reasons why they might want to consider it. And I also think it's important to have them understand the risks involved in different kinds of investing and which ones are appropriate for which buckets, because a lot of them don't understand the difference between a 401k as a bucket, as a container, versus actually putting the money to work. And so there's a lot of myths and misunderstandings. And sometimes the information they get from their friends might not be right. So, for example, my oldest has told me that many of her friends believe the best way to build your credit is to charge things on your credit card, but not pay the balance. Because then by carrying credit and showing that you can pay it every month, not the whole thing, that'll help your credit score. She has corrected them, thankfully. But it's amazing how much misinformation there is out there among them and among, the people that they follow on social media. So, for example, a lot of social media people might tell you, put your money in a high yield savings account. Well, that is better if it's a choice between savings and high yield savings. But that person might have a link to an account where they're getting a kickback every time somebody signs up. So it's important to have them understand, you know, who to listen to. Is it a certified financial planner? Is it an advisor with some credentials that they understand? Or is it just, what we call a finfluencer that may be selling something, right? And if you want what they're selling, go in with eyes wide open, that's fine. But at the same time, it's important to teach them to recognize who to really listen to and to be able to learn enough to make their own decisions and know when they need professional advice as well. So it's a lot. It's an hour-long presentation. I don't want to share all of it here, but it gets people most of all excited about educating themselves, because you can't do everything in an hour, but you can motivate them and inspire them to get on the right track. And I think that's really, really important for young people, to actually get them excited about it and understand the possibilities, especially like compound interest and things like that. Look at what the stock market did last year, right? The S&P, I do this. I mean, 25% total return on the S&P 500 last year. That's exciting.
So many people sold in the middle of the year. That August, that went bad. Yeah.
But you also have to say to them, if that's your risk tolerance and you need to do that to sleep well at night and you took some profits, live with that decision. Put that in the bank, think about it, and say, I needed that comfort. And maybe my resource allocation is going to be different going forward. So I don't feel I have to sell in a clutch, right? So I feel confident that this amount of my money is for the long term and I'm going to ride the wave. Even if I'm worried about it, I'm going to let it ride. And this amount, maybe I do put it in CDs, because you know what? If you don't have the tolerance, take your 4%. That's okay. And just own that's, you are not a high risk person. I had dinner last night with a guy who does very high risk investing. And I asked him how he slept at night. And he said, sometimes okay, sometimes not so much. And I'm like, that's okay. That's his choice. That's his business. He's done really well. But you have to know your risk tolerance. And I think it's important to respect the fact that some people can't handle it. They can't handle all that uncertainty in the market. And that's okay. Take your smaller profits, go to sleep well at night.
It seems like kids take longer to become independent adults. What kind of cultural changes have been going on?
It was almost embarrassing when I was, it was the 1990s, and I lived at home the whole summer after graduation. I didn't move out until September, and I was horrified at the time. I got my first job at CNBC. I got it in August. I moved out in September, but until then, it was so embarrassing. I was living at home with my parents, and I look back and I go, why was that so bad? Like, what's the rush? So I look back and I say, maybe, especially I had a low paying job. Ashley had a high paying job. I had a low paying job. Instead of leaving my dad's house, my parents' house so young, maybe I should have lived at home for 2 years and banked the money, right?
Definitely.
That's why I say, let's question our assumptions. Why are we in such a rush to have them be financially independent? Maybe we should say, let's be dependent for a little longer and give you a better foundation.
How do you as a parent, foster behaviors to achieve that end result where they're a financial grown-up?
You have tough conversations, and they are tough. And right now we're having them with our 17-year-old. He's looking at colleges, and we've made it very clear that he needs to pick a major that will lead to an income producing career.
Ooh.
And I say that to him. I say that very directly. I say, I know you want to do X, Y, and Z, but you're also the same skills can be used for other things. So, for example, he loves doing creative things. He's very talented. Like I said, he won a big award for a creative endeavor. And I said, okay, but I walked into your room the other day, and you know what you were doing for the STEM club? He's like, yeah, I was making a presentation about we need to have this amount of money because we want to do these things. So we need to raise this amount of money if we want to spend this amount of money. And he was making this whole PowerPoint presentation about, how they were going to do it and stuff. I said, you just made a business plan. He said, I did. I said, you did. He said, oh, but I was just messing around. I'm like, yes, but you have a good head for business. And he was like, oh, okay. And I also pointed out to him as he made the arguments for the project that we eventually told him he couldn't go on, that I just spoke about. I said, you're also very good lobbying. I mean, he was relentless, Josh. It was brutal.
Well, that's a great skill. That's persistence.
I'm like, maybe you should be a lawyer in the courtroom, that not a paper pusher. You should, he was really good, really good. So, I'm trying to prod him to see that he has skills that can be more focused on income. And once he has the financial foundation, then he can go off and do his creative pursuits, if that makes sense. In other words, I'm not going to stop him, but he needs to be honest with himself, unless he wants to live at home with us forever, which he definitely does not want to do in Florida. Then he needs to just be thinking about this. And I think having very frank conversations about your expectations for them and your confidence in them is really important. Lead with positivity. Like I said, wow, you're really good at this. Also, you're really good at that. You could make a lot of money at that. And if you make a lot of money, you could go finance a film, right? You could go be in the film business and have fun, or run a YouTube channel, right? But if you can't pay your rent, you're just going to come live with us. And they don't want that. Not long term, certainly.
I look back on my own life, and you have kids, you have financial pressures, you run a business. Some of my happiest moments were in college, studying, humanities and classic languages, and reading ancient Hebrew and ancient Greek, and studying philosophy and things that really have not, they're not really material and utilitarian, but it helped me, I think, connect with people in business. So I'm a big believer in a good liberal arts education, even though people have kind of soured on that. I think and I also think you're young and have no responsibilities for a small period of time. So, the creative arts, or I don't know, I'm okay if he spends 4 years, in creative art.
I don't disagree with it. In fact, what I'm coaching him to do and hoping he will do, poor Harry is being talked about here, but what I'm hoping he will do is just that. And I've encouraged his creative writing. Like I said, he's entering contests. He won a very large, a big contest with Scholastic. Scholastic runs a writing contest, and he won. We're going to go to the awards ceremony in New York. I'm very proud of him. That can be used for any kind of business. And we've talked to him about that we encourage the creative writing. What I don't encourage is, going into something where you've narrowed your career prospects because you've so focused on, let's say, only doing the film. You study film, I'm making this up now, but like film editing for documentaries, and you're so laser focused that you're cutting out other opportunities. I think a liberal arts education, especially if you focus on writing and communication, can serve any career well, and can certainly turn into something that's income producing. But I do think it's important, especially if your kid comes from a comfortable background, that they do understand that you expect them to be financially self-sufficient at an appropriate time. And that appropriate time, you clearly want it much earlier than I think I expect it. But, I think that's a family decision, what that appropriate time is. But, it's okay to get there a little bit slower. I think sometimes our generation was a little bit too rushed.
So for your son, what major is he going to study, or he doesn't know?
Well, I mean, look, it's still TBD. He's a junior in high school.
So same age as mine. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and I would love for him to change his mind 5 times. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. I totally agree with you. College is a time to try different things and really work on skills that are going to apply to any career. What I don't want is to have, I don't think it's good for kids generally, unless you really are sure to be put, to put themselves in something where they're locked into a very specific career. I think having options is really good and having transferable skills. Look, so many of the jobs that we have and our friends have did not exist when we were in college. My husband is a cybersecurity consultant, right? That did not exist like it does today. We barely had computers, right? So I think having those transferable skills and just learning to be a smart person, learning to, by the way, just show up on time at work, understand the task you're being assigned, understand how to deal with, your bosses, and then hopefully as you move up, how to deal with employees underneath you, right? How to manage the workplace. I hope more people start working in person these days because I think it's really good for young people to see that in-person interaction and get better at those social skills. But those are important things. I just hope that all of our kids are open-minded and don't feel that because they were interested in something when they were 17, that's who they have to be. I think it's okay to change your mind.
I think sometimes in life, you're good at things that you don't realize you'd be good at. I never thought I would be a financial planner, financial advisor. And I kind of stumbled into it and just you end up succeeding in things. If you don't succeed, I think it's a good tip from God and the universe that you shouldn't be doing something. Kids are having trouble buying a first home. I don't know even how I would do it. Because I remember when I bought my first home, my in-laws thought it was like a slum and they didn't like that I bought it in the neighborhood that I bought it in. And then I saved for our house that we're in today until we had a market crash. And then that's when I bought it. I timed it perfectly because I saw the '08 crash coming. And I'm like, I'm going to buy my dream house when everything goes to hell. And I did. But I can't fathom people, these $850,000 starter homes. I don't know how they're doing it.
Yeah, I think it's really hard, and we should acknowledge that it's really, really hard. And the truth is, most people that are succeeding are doing it in some fashion, back to our conversation, with a little support from their parents. That support may come from being able to live at home for free, which is what we did with our daughter. She lived at home for free for 2 years. She banked her entire salary. She specifically chose a career that was high paying, that is not necessarily, if money weren't an object, and money is an object, she would not have chosen that career. It's really hard. I am very proud of her, but that girl works really hard and her fiance works really hard. And it's a realization that if it is important to you to buy a home, you're going to work really hard and you're going to make choices. Like, I'm sure she wasn't thrilled to live with her parents, right? But she did it. And she also, and it made me sad when I heard about it later on, she did turn down some social things she might have liked to have done. Instead of meeting her friends out for dinner at a trendy place, she met them afterwards, maybe for a drink, right? And maybe she took the subway instead of the Uber that all those girls were taking. It's true. She made some tough choices and she really sacrificed. And I think that it's a math equation. $850,000. Okay. Do I want to do a 10% down payment and get PMI? Fine. If you want to do that, how am I going to save $85,000? This is what I make per year. If I can find a rent-free situation for a defined period of time, what can it be? Or, if parents are generous and can afford it, it's not the worst thing to say to your kids, I'll help you with the down payment. People have done that for generations. And if your kids can then support the loan on the house, if they could pay the mortgage, but they don't have the down payment, and you have the resources without hurting your own retirement, and you can give them or loan them or in some way get them the money for the down payment, it's the down payment's the killer, like you said. It's so much money. Help your kids. There's nothing wrong with helping a kid that is also going to work hard. Life is hard. Give them a head start if you can. As long as, you don't undermine their confidence and you let them know that you believe in them and they're going to support this house, they're going to pay for things. Absolutely. I've had generous parents. I mean, your parents, I think probably sounds like they couldn't at the time, but you had good parents. I mean, there's nothing wrong with helping your kids if you can, is what I would say. And it's sad that our world is in that place where that's my advice. I mean, that's terrible advice to be like, oh, ask your parents. But It's really hard out there. And if you don't have that, get a lot of roommates. Get your overhead as low as possible. Take the smallest room in the apartment. Share a room, get little, twin beds and suck it up for 2 years and get a really, really, really low overhead cost of living and just pummel away your money. And most of all, and Ashley did this, tell your friends what you're doing. So they know it's not about them. It's not that you don't want to be out with them the whole night, but your priority is saving for a home. And you're just not going to be out. You're not going to go on that expensive, bachelor party or whatever it is. You're going to meet them halfway, do some things, not all. But you're going to make life choices and it really stinks. But unfortunately, that's the reality.
I did that when my friends, I would have good old Gorp, good old raisins and peanuts. I would bring a little bag of broccoli and raisins and peanuts around when my friends would go out. And I would sometimes sit with them out for dinner and just have water and say, oh, thank you. And it was a little awkward after a while. They get made fun of me. And then after a while, nobody cared. So it was a great opportunity. So I learned, I basically lost nothing by not spending money on food and alcohol. You know what I mean?
Right. And tell your friends, tell them why you're doing it. Because you know what? Maybe you'll inspire them and you guys can all, instead of going out 3 nights a week, you go out 1 night a week in a different place, choose a place that's going to be less expensive and you party, in somebody's apartment or whatever you do, find other ways to do it together because you're only going to help them. Don't judge them for spending the money, but tell them, hey, this is what I'm doing because I'm saving up for a house. And I might decide, yeah, I'm going to do that too. And then you got an ally and a supporter, an accountability partner, and it's going to be that much easier. I had a really good friend who I'm still very close to. When we were in our first apartments, and like I said, my parental subsidy was getting lower and lower every month. I had to be responsible. We were eating mac and cheese and we were sharing. The box was 99 cents, Josh, and we were sharing it. But we hung out together in our little teeny tiny apartments, and that was okay. But it's okay to be young and living an appropriate lifestyle for where you are in your life stage. And parents should not push their kids to, if your kids ask you where they should go out to dinner, don't tell them the fancy place that you go to for special occasions. Suggest something appropriate for their budget. Be an ally. Don't push them to be at your lifestyle level when it's not necessary. Let them live in a dump, a safe dump. It should be safe. Safety first, but they don't have to live in a beautiful, fabulous. Let them be aspirational. Let them also have something to motivate to work for. My husband said that very wisely the other day. He was like, I'm really proud of our son. He's doing great. And I love that he's hustling because he wants to pay his own rent and he wants to move up in life. He's, driving himself. And it's great to watch a kid do that. So let them be at the age appropriate place. And then they'll feel really good when they themselves are the ones that help themselves get to that next level.
What financial warning signs should parents look for to know if they're doing too much for their grown kids, potentially at the expense of their own financial stability?
First of all, there's 2 things going on there. Are you doing too much for your kid and preventing them from being a financial grown-up, right? That's number 1. Are you subsidizing them in a way that they're not taking ownership of their life, that they don't think that you have the confidence in them, that they're competent enough to be financial grown-ups? Because there's 2 things happening. Because when you're subsidizing your kids without a plan, and I totally support subsidizing with a plan if it makes sense for you. Absolutely, life is hard. Make it a little easier for your kids. But if you're doing it in a way that makes them think, my parents don't think I can make it on my own, then that's a problem. Separately, the other part of your question you're asking is, basically, are you going to run out of money because you're subsidizing your kids so much? That's a math question to some degree, right? Because you need to look at your own outlook and you're a financial advisor. So you help people with this all the time. You need to figure out, and retirement is so hard. I've always asked these questions like, what's the formula for retirement? And it's like, well, it depends. There's so many variables. So many things can happen. You can say, I'm going to work till I'm 65, but then for whatever reason, you're not working starting at age 60 and you got to rejigger things, or you live 20 years longer than you ever thought you would because your parents died young, whatever it is. There's so many variables, but still you have to make an educated guess and your best possible plan for how you're going to make your money last and maybe beyond you if you want to leave an inheritance for your kids and how you want to structure that. So that's a math question ultimately. When you reflect back on if you're subsidizing your kids to the detriment of your own financial stability, that's sort of, you have to be self-aware of your own finances and literally, do a math problem, ideally with your financial advisor, and work through the numbers. How much do I need to live now and through retirement until I don't? Um, and that's tricky. It's really hard to plan when you're missing key variables, right? I find it, the closer I get to retirement, the more I'm like, how do people do this? Because, you can say you have X dollars, but like, what if, right? And we also will say, oh, you should, maybe reallocate and put more in treasuries. But I'm like, well, 4% versus 25%. I know that's not every year for sure, but there's got to be some balance there. And then, I think annuities can always be a great thing for people. It really provides a lot of security, even if you don't get the same return. We were talking about how some people panic and sold in the middle of last year. There's nothing wrong with putting your money into something, whether it's annuities, treasuries, CDs, that helps you sleep at night, right? So when you look back at your own finances and think about how am I going to be ready for retirement, that's really your own question. And what you never want to do is have to ask your kids for money. So when you subsidize your kids, that's what I always say. Are you subsidizing them to the point where you're going to have to ask them for money one day? You never want that.
Two things you said really profound. One is when you're helping a child, and I'm thinking of a family member, not a child, but different people in my family whose parents, you said, don't do things that make your kids believe you don't believe in them or something. It was something really good.
You want them to know that you have confidence that they can make it. And, what we say to all of the kids, and this includes the 25-year-old that just moved out, that it was so funny. He reimbursed us for we paid, we had to co-sign for him. And again, I think that's totally fine and people should do that for their kids. But it was something like a $12 fee and he reimbursed us. And I was like, that's ridiculous, but yet he wanted it to be his do it. He wanted to be independent. He wanted to pay his own bills. And if you insist on paying for things for kids before they ask, which a lot of people do, that is undermining their confidence. Rather, I think you should say to them, we're here. If you can't pay something, if you're spiraling and you're going to go into credit card debt, let us know. We're here as the backstop. We're here for you, but we believe in you. So just let's keep the communication lines open. Let us know if you're having financial problems and we'll work through them and we'll be there as a backstop for you. But we also believe you can pay your rent on your own. You know what I mean? We're confident in you that if you're falling short and you can get a side hustle, you'll do that to make up the difference, right? Or you want to go on a trip with your friends. We know you'll figure it out. But if you get in trouble, don't hide it from us. We're here for you and we're not going to judge. And that's a really important balance. And I couldn't believe it that this kid, he was like, no, I'm doing it on my own. And that came from him. I was so proud of him.
What do you do with a kid you don't really believe in? So what if you have a 25-year-old, they're little, they're getting in trouble too much, or 27-year-old, do you kick them out? Do you kind of say, hey, I'm going to launch you? Because I always thought, one mentor of mine said, kick your kids out early. Early could be a different age. It could be 27, 28, 22, but enough to know that once they're on their own, they'll respect you more. They'll appreciate you more. I know that's happened with me, with my parents. I mean, I got my first house at 21, 22. And after that, I always respected my parents from a standpoint of whoa, it was really hard, to do all these things that they were doing.
Every situation's different, Josh. And I'm not a psychologist. I think that goes to their mental state, which is beyond finances. I don't think that's as much of a financial question as a question about their maturity and their growing into adulthood in general.
No, but your child who's trying to pay you back, you wouldn't worry about that kid.
Of course I do.
You wouldn't worry as much as you would if they had this lingering irresponsibility.
Right. Well, again, this goes to setting clear expectations with your kids and letting them know that while you're there for them as a backstop, you're also not there for them as an income stream. Right. So you have to be very clear about that. A lot of us fall into this trap. We all, we want our kids to like us. We also want to be needed. A lot of parents are subsidizing their kids because they don't want to let go. We are a generation, I'm a Gen Xer, And we have been the helicopter parents, and that's been our purpose. It used to be parents were a lot more hands off, right? It didn't occur to my parents or my husband's parents that we would live at home past college. You finish college, you move out. My dad, I remember being like, "What are you doing here? It's August. You got to get a job. Time to go." And my husband's parents very much the same way. But they were not. It's not that they weren't invested in us. They were invested in us differently. We have spent, Gen X parents, I'm saying, so much time being helicopter parents, and our kids are so wrapped up in our identity that, number one, we have trouble letting go. We want to be needed still, sometimes a little too attached. I talk in my book about concierge parenting, which is the next step after helicopter. People also talk about snow plowing, where you're kind of just clearing out the snow, making sure everything goes smoothly for your kids. It's well intentioned, but the kids are often not asking for it. So very often the kid that you're so worried about, maybe with a little push, a gentle push might be okay, right? Maybe you help them get set up and then say, "This is the timeline. What's your plan?" And it's okay to let them fail a little, right? Obviously, there's an extreme case where you're going to step in. But it's okay to say to them, "You're moving out by this date, and how are you going to pay your rent?" And let them figure it out, right? But it is okay for them to see. And I've seen that with all of the kids, the awareness of what things cost. And I think that's really important for them to understand. And they might rethink, do they really need the organic meat? Do they really need the extra, or maybe they're going to walk instead of taking even a subway, let alone a taxi or an Uber, right? They start to think differently. I remember I interviewed somebody for my podcast at one point, which is now on pause. And she's, I'll tell you who it was. It was Randy Zuckerberg, who is now very wealthy because of Facebook, public information. And she talked about how frustrated she was when she was working in New York City in advertising. And her mother would come in and she would buy her something very fancy, a fancy pair of shoes or something. And she wouldn't let her have the receipt. She wouldn't let her return it. And Randy was so tight on money at the time that she would walk rather than spend the money on a Metro card on the subway. She would walk everywhere because she was really watching her money. Even though her parents were wealthy, they were teaching her lessons. Like, well, we'll buy you a nice pair of shoes, but your life, your daily expenses are on you. And I think it's an interesting approach. At the time I thought it was harsh. If anyone goes back and listens to that podcast, I sort of talk Randy's side. I thought, your parents are so mean. But now, as a more mature parent, I kind of see the lesson that they were teaching her.
So they would buy her a car and shoes, but not.
They wouldn't buy her a car. They bought her a fancy designer shoes that she didn't really need. But, because or they take her to a facial or, things like that. But they were like, you are responsible for your everyday expenses. Does that make sense? And at the time, like I said, at the time, I thought it was terrible of her parents. But now I understand their thinking that, we'll buy you the extras in life, but you have to understand what your life costs, and you are responsible to pay for what your life costs. And if I want to take you to the spa for the day, I'll do that because I have money, because I'm older than you and I've earned money. But right now you're 22 and you're in your first job, and you need to live like you're 22 in your first job. And I have come to respect that. Like I said, at first I was like, they are so mean.
Yeah, I like it.
But I get it now.
What if you have a spouse who doesn't really agree with you on how you handle money?
I'm not going to lie. I think the best thing you could do is talk privately and come to terms. And someone is going to have to compromise. But at least for the kids, you will both benefit and your marriage will benefit if you present a united front. Because if one of you starts doing the grandparent thing, and you know what I mean by that, like slipping the kid $20 here and there, someone's going to find out. And it really undermines each of your relationships with the kids. And it really undermines what you're trying to do. So whatever you come to, and sometimes, and I think you have to accept the fact that sometimes you're going to lose. Even if you think you're right, it's better to be together than to win sometimes, because you have to also preserve your marriage, and you're going to disagree. And you're going to have to compromise.
So you mentioned a bunch of stuff on annuities, treasuries, bonds. Kind of reminds me of the saying is the best portfolio is the one you can live with and the one you don't vomit out when the market's down. There needs to be more said about building a portfolio for longevity and happiness and joy. Any thoughts on that? I know you touched on it briefly, but.
Yeah, Yeah, I think when we're having these generational conversations about money, it's okay to give kids permission to be themselves. And it's really important that they do understand that, for example, the stock market is very volatile. Now, I absolutely do not think people in their 20s should be buying annuities. Let me be clear. I am in no way advocating that. That said, they can put some money in a CD. They can put some money in a high yield savings account. There's a good conversation to be had about having an emergency fund because young people are not immune, by the way, to layoffs, right? And we know a lot of people are experiencing layoffs. It's important, even though, the math works that you should be extremely high risk when you're younger. If that is not the personality and they're going to panic and start selling every time the market goes down, that has to be taken into consideration. You have to have these talks with them. I also think it should be noted that, young people, let's say in their 20s right now, in their first and second jobs, most of them have not really seen a down market um, in a way that's tangible to them. And they also haven't seen mortgage rates at the level that we have right now. So they seem very high. To you and me, 7%, yes, it is double what just a few years ago you could get. That said, we have seen much higher rates in our lifetime. And so it's important to help them understand perspective and understand that, just because the market went up 25% last year in total return, the S&P I'm talking about, doesn't mean that it's a failure if you only make 10%. It's not a failure if you make zero. It's not a failure if you go down 5% one year. That's the way it is. And it's a tough conversation to have because they've seen a very specific market, both in terms of mortgage rates, interest rates, and also in terms of expectations for what you can get on investments. And they hear about these meme stocks and you hear about NVIDIA and all these stocks that get all this buzz. It's okay to tell them you didn't fail because you didn't buy NVIDIA a year ago, right? It's okay to just buy an index fund if that's what works for you at this stage in life. Or if all you're doing is putting money into your 401k and choosing an equity fund or, whatever fund you're choosing, make sure they're choosing something. It's okay. You don't have to do everything right now. And you're probably never going to be the best investor, but you're not going to be the worst investor. And that's okay. And just get in the game, be deliberate, be intentional, be consistent in your investing. That's really what's going to serve you the most. And you're going to invest in your 20s. You're going to wake up in your 40s and 50s and go, oh my goodness, I have a good amount of money. This worked. And it's going to be a great feeling. And so I just don't want people to be scared away if the market doesn't go up this year, because I think people have gotten used to, well, I put my money in stocks. Why am I not getting this amazing return? It's not going to happen every year. I hope it does, but it probably won't. And you have to stick with it. And I remember my grandfather used to tell me not to be sad when the market went down because that was just the time to buy. And I don't want to tell everyone to time the market, but it's just a way to kind of put a smile on your face. Oh, my stock went down. Is it still a good stock? Do I believe in it as much as ever? Do I have money on the sidelines? Maybe I should consider buying more. Maybe this is an opportunity. Or maybe there's a fundamental reason it went down and I need to think about that. Maybe it's time to take a profit. Another piece of advice I got from him: you never lose money taking a profit. It's okay.
That's a good one.
Right? But people forget that.
You got to do a personal finance book too. Another one again. But I love your just simple, plain spoken way. That's true to people's life experience. It reminds me of the talk I had with a retiree. He's not really retired yet. The guy's millions of dollars. He's got to be like 69, 70. He was so worried about the market. Mind you, this is a guy who's been in the market for 50 years. So he knows, he's had battle scars, and he's like, I'm getting older. I don't want it. And like you said, it's okay to do an annuity. It's okay to do bonds. It's okay to do, and it's okay to make 10% when the market's up 20%. People don't get that. The best portfolio is the one you don't vomit. I remember when I was a kid, my parents lost everything in the stock market crash of 2001 because it coupled with the market downturn. So they basically did everything wrong. They converted their pension to a 401k when you could do that. Then the market went down. They were in like the NASDAQ, so it went down like 90%. Then he got disabled. So it was like a string of bad events. So I came into the business, which was funny, with a healthy distrust of the market. That I didn't really, even though I was in the business from 22 to 30, I was ultra conservative. I was investing like a little old lady. Cash, insurance, not a if there was an annuity for a 22-year-old, I would have bought it then. And then somewhere in my 30s, I was like, yeah, I'm going to start plowing money in the market right about 30, 28, 30, and I've made more on that bucket of money, right? But the first bucket gave me the confidence to build my own business, to be an employer, you know what I mean? So there's no wrong answer. It really is customizable to the person. I mean, they're wrong, I guess, bad products. But, as we conclude, what are you researching now?
Oh, you want the scoop? So, I actually am considering. I'm curious. Maybe you have an opinion on this. I was going to turn my popular workshop about the checklist into a book. I'm now actually thinking of writing a midlife money panic book about how people in midlife often panic about their money. So I don't know what you think.
I like them both. Do both.
It's a lot of work, Josh. I don't know.
Do one at a time. Midlife money
Which one
panic.
first, though? Which one first?
I like a checklist because you could do a checklist for older people, middle people, and younger people. Midlife, and I've just done this by our research. People 50 to 55 are just starting to wake up to their money.
And I'm in that category. They're looking at their bank accounts and going, do I have what we were talking about before? How am I ready for retirement? Not that you're retiring now, but like, how's it looking? Because you're now at the first time in your life, you're sort of like, wait, I'm still putting money into my 401k, but I'm going to at some point take money out. How does that look? How does that work? And that's a much tougher calculation because going in, just max out if you can. It's easy. More is more. Going out, it's tricky.
No, I love the midlife money panic. Maybe do that, but maybe call it something else. Midlife.
Yeah, but the alliteration's good. Midlife money. I don't know. 50-something money panic doesn't have the same ring.
The one thing I'm seeing, though, in the new crop of people, 40s and 50s, that is troubling is they are worse than their parents. They have a hubris. The boomers were humbled by the '08 crash. Some of these people coming up, and they're listeners of the show, so we love you all, but they almost have this pride that's interesting. You always have to realize we are one crash away from really everyone being humbled. And just a few things go wrong and you could be practicing the phrase, welcome to Walmart again. So I think that's good. That sounds fun. And then where can our listeners find out more about what you do at Financial Wellness Strategies?
Go to the website, financialwellnessstrategies.com. Super easy. And, check out my book, Launching Financial Grownups, available everywhere books are sold, but, certainly easy to buy online at Amazon and whatever, Barnes & Noble.
Fantastic. Bobbi Rebell, CFP, certified financial planner in honor of her father. Now, you should have just left it as, Dad, I'm a CFP. And then
I know. Well, he knows I've written real books that are in real actual bookstores and all that. So all I think we really want is for our parents to be proud of us. Right, Josh?
Yeah, it's funny, though. I was so proud when I had my first book published by a real publishing house. And then I didn't make any real money off that book. I think for my next book, I'm going to self-publish. Because I have friends who self-publish and they make a lot more off the books,
I'm thinking about that too.
To distribute it?
Yeah. Well, distribution's easy now because you can do that online. You can do it on your own website. You can do it through Amazon. I don't think it's that hard. That's our next podcast, Josh.
There we go. So wonderful. Bobbi Rebell, Launching Financial Grownups. Get the book now. Or if you want us to give you a copy of the book, I'll give you a copy of the book, Launching Financial Grownups, free when you schedule and keep your no obligation review, or go to Amazon, buy the book, Launching Financial Grownups, and check out Financial Wellness Strategies. Is it .com?
Yep, that's it. Really easy. Financialwellnessstrategies.com.
Wonderful. Have a great day.
Thanks, Josh.
Thanks as always.